Welcome to another episode of The Crow's Nest. I'm your host, Christopher Corvo, and on today's episode, we're going to entitle it Superheroes Round 2. Superheroes Round Dos. And on this episode, we're gonna try to answer a question. We're going to ask ourselves, if superheroes were real, if they were living beings walking amongst us, walking our city streets, our towns, living in our country, how would they survive cancel culture? How would they survive the social scene that we find ourselves in today? And honestly, I got no idea. So I've gathered here a ragtag bunch of weekend warriors. I have the legend Robert Avery, aka Bobby A. We have a new guest, a new friend. I'll leave his introduction up to Rob. And I have, of course, the Haitian Wanderer. So I hope that with the four of our minds, the four of us combined, we can try to answer this question. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to present to you our next conversation. I hope you enjoy.
All right, folks, we are joined in the nest by a very special guest. And I want to thank him personally, and I'm sure I could speak for Joseph and Christopher in thanking him as well. It's Logan Sullivan. It's good to speak to you again. It's been a long time, but I want to tell you the first time I met Logan Sullivan. And just like I told you the story of the first time I met Joseph Mark, and it was at the same place. And when he walked in to this place of work and I saw this jolly big Irish bastard roaming around, and I was thinking to myself, who was going to be friends with him? Well, sure as shit, Robert Avery. And it wasn't long before we were at bars at the Upper East Side, totally buckled. It was in my roaring 20s, if anyone's listened to that pod. It was when I was a madman in my 20s. I mean, I'm still kind of am, but that's a topic for another time. So we were smothered left and right, up and down, and just having ourselves a whale of a time swimming through the UASC. And we bonded over sports, New York Rangers hockey in particular, I remember. But he's also a fan of the Baltimore Ravens and the Orioles. So maybe we can get into that later, but Jesus, he's a funny guy, cool dude, and we're happy to have him on board. I think he's going to be a friend of the program. So we're going to talk about a little bit about superheroes, about cancel culture, and how these superheroes can survive this volcano of a social climate we have going in 2020. So welcome to the Crow's Nest, Logan Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you, Logan, for jumping in to this episode, and thank you, Rob, for that beautiful introduction. Why don't you take a moment, Logan, and try to lay out this subject for us? Because honestly, I haven't really read anything that compares or looks at what's been going on in our society with the Me Too movement, with cancel culture, and does a comparison or how that relates to comic book characters and comics in general. So why don't you just give us a few minutes and lay out this subject, because it's got to be something that you've been thinking about and is on your mind.
Yeah, 100%. So this actually really stemmed from one of the episodes when you guys were talking about Batman and talking about, what superheroes are role models and stuff like that. And I found it pretty interesting. And then just, being locked up in my house for the past 4 months, I got a weird brain going, and seeing the constant news cycle and everybody getting canceled, and you can't say anything, and if people disagree, that's the end, and you get different censorship and stuff. I just started thinking about like superheroes and how many superheroes would actually survive the year 2020, whether it be from an economic standpoint, from a belief standpoint, from the whole vigilante standpoint, or even just something as simple as the acceptance and, preventing the mass people from getting access to whatever makes them, a superhero, right? Or whatever knowledge they have. So yeah, I texted Rob about it and kind of just went from there. through doing a couple Google searches and stuff, I found out that there is a bunch of different articles about Iron Man and Batman's tax evasion. So there's a lot of stuff out there, boys. So buckle up.
What?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's preposterous, and I think it's just one of those things where
That's unbelievable. I had no idea.
people, yeah. So it's pretty funny. Like people, the same way you guys follow sports. Someone finds this weird stat about how Mitch Trubisky is the best quarterback when it's 68 degrees out, but it's just weird stuff. Yeah, so it's wild. You can find whatever you want on the internet, and I think that's actually part of the current climate we're in, right? You can find everybody that agrees with you.
Absolutely.
So I mean, the first example I really thought of that came to mind was Batman, and both sides of Batman, right? So Batman, the superhero, the vigilante, the Dark Knight, but also Bruce Wayne, the philanthropist, right? The philanthropist, the pillar of the community. But Bruce Wayne did make his living and his inheritance from war, right? From creating all these weapons and stuff. So that was one I thought would be pretty interesting to kind of start with, just to kind of think about, well, Bruce Wayne does all this great philanthropy, but where does the money come from? And do we accept that money? So I'll just kind of start it with there and get your opinion on that stuff. I know Joe's a big Batman fan too, so it'd be interesting to hear that.
Joe, why don't you take this one next? Because I know Batman. Batman's got a place in your heart. I think he's maybe your long lost fairy godfather. He's your guy.
Batman is everyone's guy, but go ahead, Joe.
No, I agree with Rob on that one. So that's a great little pairing where it's the Batman side and the Bruce Wayne side. The Batman side would definitely get killed by cancel culture. Just the tactics that he uses to try to bring down criminals now would not be accepted. The fact that he's a vigilante would not be accepted. The fact that he answers to no one. He pretty much uses the cover of darkness to actually pretty much take out like villains and all of those other things. I don't see how he could really last if he was created today, how he would actually last in today's cancel culture. And let's say if it was a real character, he would definitely not last today either.
So here's a question for you. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
But they keep making Batman movies, and the movies are still made in the timeline that we're in right now. So how does that work out or with this cancel culture and these different things you're hearing about, right? Like they keep making Marvel movies, they keep making these Batman movies. So how can these both be working? Because you're right, like Batman is a strong man. He's a white wealthy man. Let's be honest. And you're right. A lot of his money's probably come through a variety of different means. So is it that we just haven't turned the lens on these characters yet?
I mean, that's kind of my thinking, is no one's, done that hit piece on Batman. No one's gone for that like clickbait article on, whomever it is to be like, well, let me show you the other side of him. Right. So I think that would be part of it. And then, I mean, kind of what Joe was saying, like his tactics and stuff. I think everybody has always felt like, well, Batman doesn't kill anybody, so he's not that bad. He's cleaning up the streets because the cops can't, right? He has the access to all these tools that we don't know how he gets, but he might blow up, 30 city blocks, but he catches a supervillain. So I think that's pretty interesting, right? Just to kind of think about it like that way. And again, it's pretty preposterous, and that's why I think this is so interesting, to kind of take these superheroes out of their universe or multiverse, right? And put them in today and be like, would this made up person survive? But then you see different people getting canceled for stuff they said, 15, 20 years ago out of context. And you're like, well, how did they survive? And then you also have other people that rightfully should get canceled. And then, then you look at that too, and you're just like, what is going on? So that's where I found to be pretty interesting and jumping around through there.
With Batman, he like you said, Logan, he's definitely a vigilante, but his methods aren't as brutal as, let's say, the Punisher. He's not going to blow someone away just because he thinks they're in the wrong, or they somehow robbed someone, or did something that wouldn't be uh, in the Punisher's realm of ideology, of like trying to figure out how to navigate getting rid of villains on the streets, things like that. Um, Bruce Wayne is a little different because he does make some of his money off of his sales of arms, but most of his money is inheritance. So I think he would definitely be more so criticized by the culture of being like someone who just inherited money, and he's definitely a playboy. He goes out there and just spends his money uh, kind of wantonly. He plays around with women all the time. So he would definitely be ridiculed by cancel culture. If anything, probably more so than his Batman persona, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that you have a point there, but I'm going to disagree a little bit. The thing about Bruce Wayne slash Batman with me is his intentions are always in the right place. There's never anything malicious, and he's never anything selfish about Batman. If anything, what do they say? And I think they do this pretty well in the Christopher Nolan take on the Batman world or universe. He's doing essentially the dirty work that needs to be done in Gotham City because it's such a shit show, not unlike what we have going in 2020 right now, where the world is just who the fuck knows what's happening right now. Like it's just there's just so much bad shit happening, and you need someone to get their hands dirty, get in there, not take credit for anything, just do it quietly, get it done, and it's going to be beneficial for everyone else because of it. And kind of like I think they even shoot it cinematically with that last scene where you see him in the I forgot, it's the Batwing. I forget the name of his airplane, but where he goes off and everyone thinks he's dead, but then Alfred says, "I see you drinking the Fernie Branca," and he sees him in fucking Florence afterwards, so he's still alive. And so Batman is willing, even though he does have everything, at least in an aesthetic way. He's a handsome man. He's well trained in fighting and skills and all kinds of martial arts. He's very intelligent. He's the best detective. He has all these gadgets, but he's willing to give all that up and selflessly work for the people of Gotham City to the point where even he would give his own life for it to save them. So that's the I would say there's the rub with Batman. Yes, his methods are questionable. He definitely beds a lot of women. That would definitely get him in a lot of hot water these days. The way especially the Christian Bale version of him. I think the Michael Keaton version would be a little safer in these times, but the Christian Bale version would have difficulty. But in the end, he's willing to give his life for Gotham City.
Yeah, I think the quote you were thinking about, I'm just looking it up right now, is it says, "Because he's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now. So we'll hunt him because he can take it. Because he's not our hero.
Thank you. Yeah,
he's a silent guardian, a watchful protector." Along with this, I'm looking at some of these different articles because you're right, Logan. There are a ton of them. There's a lot of people writing about comic book characters, and a lot of these articles, these headings that I'm seeing, are not that great. They're painting a pretty negative picture of these characters. So along with this, I guess I have a couple things I'm thinking about. Right. First off, it's not even Batman's methods. I think it's that he believes it's his duty to be that person, to be the one to fight crime. And I guess my question to all of you is, with everything that's going on in the world, is even that up for debate, right? Are there criminals? Do they deserve to be put in jail? Are they committing a crime? Or is it that society has just let them down? And who they are and what they're doing is just a result of society not doing its part to help them or to alleviate whatever issue that then manifests in whatever activity they're a part of. Because with these comic book characters, there's good and there's evil. There's the good guys and the bad guys. And the lines, right? The lines are very much divided. Right? With Batman, you do have a little bit more gray. But with a lot of the characters, like Superman, for example, Superman's the good guy. He's always the good guy for the most part. And there's the bad guy. And I kind of even wonder if that black and white line in the sand is the next thing to be attacked, because you kind of hear it. We kind of live in a world where it's a little bit of a free for all, where it's kind of like it's not right to say that something's wrong. It's not good to draw a line in the sand. It's more about what you feel is right, and right is it manifests in different ways. It's kind of up for debate. I might be talking out of my ass, so like definitely disagree with me.
Yeah, let me kick this off, and then I'm eager to hear with what Joe or Logan think about this. But it's a big time issue, at least for me personally, and I'm sure I could speak for a lot of other people. Is during this time, you on both sides, on all sides of every political spectrum, on every societal belief, religious belief, whatever you feel strongly or passionate about. Now it's gotten to the point where if you don't help and support the way I want you to help and support, it doesn't count anymore. It's not only does it not count, I don't want any part of it. You need to help my cause in the way I want you to help my cause. It's not good enough. Just like Batman made, as we were saying, he has different ways. He has different manners in which he thinks about things and does things. But if you don't help people the way that someone wants you to help them, it's instantly wrong now. And I think that's a gigantic problem we have, especially in America right now. But I'll toss it to you boys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that kind of lines up, and I just think about like how those famous Batman scenes where he just grabs somebody, ties them up, and leaves them hanging for the cops, right? Where he beats the whole group of people, the gang, and then he just leaves them, and Gordon comes in and takes them, and they're like, oh man, Batman, he's able to skirt the law, he's able to kind of get the job done. We are kind of seeing that now, right? Depending on what news you're watching and who you're talking to, about people just getting pulled off the street, warrantless, stuff like that. And there's a completely different reaction to that. So I think that's something that's definitely changing and evolving. But back to Chris's point about those societal norms and that society failed them, it would be interesting to see Batman as who is a philanthropist, right? Who is someone who's dedicated his life and his money to making Gotham better, right? But he's still failed, right? So now he has that yin and yang approach to it. And that's, I mean, we don't have to spend too much time just on Batman, but I think that goes, if you look at someone like the Punisher, you look at Superman, is he too powerful? Why does he have this power? Where's the check and balances? You even look at something like Unobtainium, right? Or Black Panther, where they have this like walled approach and you can't get into Wakanda. Like there's a whole bunch of different stuff out there, which is just pretty fascinating just to imagine, these people getting dragged on Twitter by someone from the media just trying to get like their clicks, or trying to be that virtue signal and gaslighting.
So
Wait, 1 second, real quick. Just for this conversation right now, do you want us to imagine as if these characters were real, like actually living in the world, doing their living their hero life, and how current cancel culture would affect them if they were real people? Or are we talking about the character, the artistic rendering?
No, I meant like the current like societal impact, right? Like with everything going on in 2020, 2019, 2018, going back, like if these superheroes, right, were in today's society, would they like be able to survive this like social media onslaught, this cancel culture, the cancel the cops, the be more accepting of everybody, the if you don't agree with me, you're wrong, and I'm going to drag you and ruin your reputation and stuff like that. So that's kind of the stuff. And then really talking about like what is privilege within that these superheroes have, and how do they utilize that, and would that even stand up?
Got it. That's clear in my mind. Sorry for interrupting. Whoever wants to go.
no, No, that's cool. I was thinking if Batman were to be in today's society, I think he would actually be championed by the people and kind of loathed by the police departments. The police don't want a vigilante out there taking the law into their own hands. They want to be the ones to actually take the law and pretty much dole out justice the way it should be. Meanwhile, I think the average citizen would actually be, well, for the most part, they would be fine with a vigilante doing the job that they feel that the police are not doing effectively. So I feel like someone like Batman could fly in today's culture. Um, I mean, obviously, there would be some people that just wouldn't be okay with a vigilante out there, but I think in today's culture, someone like Batman might be champion.
No way. I completely disagree with you, Joe. You're telling me if we're looking at Batman as a real character or Superman or any of these guys, super powerful, above the law, above the government, right? Because this kind of ties into that Civil War movie, the Marvel Civil War movie. No. Do you really think these movements that are a part of like what's going on in the world would be happy to have these individuals, these extremely powerful individuals like Iron Man or Batman, also extremely wealthy and they're powerful? Do you really think these different movements, these different groups would be happy and okay with them? You think they'd embrace them?
To
I'd find that
quickly
I think they would be done, whether
to quickly
figuratively
rebuttal
or literally.
to quickly rebuttal that, I do think that the general public just has a general distrust of government. So I think that's something to think about when it comes to how people might perceive a vigilante as opposed to an actual government agency policing the population. So I think there's something to uh, how you might think a population might view a vigilante, and particularly someone like a Batman or Iron Man or Punisher or someone who takes the law into their own hands.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that, right? I mean, but the thing is, it has to get so bad to the point that someone's gonna, accept that with open arms, right? I mean, even looking at what was it, that X-Men movie that came out in like 2000, where they had like the mutant, what did they call it, like the mutant, where they had to like register as a mutant.
The
That
Mutant
whole
Registry.
the Mutant Registration Act. Yeah, there you go. So I mean, you have that. Like, it's. I mean, it's almost dystopian how all this stuff is like coming to the forefront and different stuff like that, right? And the Mutant Registration Act, Batman. Then you look at Bruce Wayne, or you look at any of these superheroes, and you start talking about like the redistribution of wealth and the 1% and the 1% of the 1%. So that's why I really don't think Batman, Bruce Wayne survives at all, right? Punisher, maybe just because no one really knows who he is, right? Just kind of living in the shadows. But I can't imagine it's somebody being open to this, having this guy on a murder rampage running around, which we kind of saw in those Netflix specials, or I mean, even the regular Punisher movies. Shout out John Travolta. So I mean, yeah, that's can't forget. It's a show. You see that on FX. That's 3 hours of your life.
That's right. Um, but yeah, quickly to just make a point, I think, so admittedly, I'm not as well versed as the three of you on anyone outside of the Batman or even like just like the suburban areas of the Batman universe, if that makes any sense. I'm not like the Punisher and definitely not Marvel in any way. But if we're going to talk about a world where people have superpowers and there's literally gods walking amongst us, or mutants, like Logan said, or aliens, that will that changes so much about the social climate and environment that we're living in. I don't think people are actually ready for that. So I think this is a very interesting topic because I think you're going to get immense jealousy. You're going to get all kinds of, you kind of see it in X-Men where the humans like completely despise them, at least some sector of them. So that once you put people with special abilities in the climate, it changes everything drastically, in my view.
Did any of you guys see the TV show The Boys on Amazon Prime? I feel like that show kind of ties in perfectly with what we're talking about, because you can see some of the things that they have to deal with. Because the heroes that we're talking about, they would become a type of celebrity, right? They're not athletes, they're not actors, but they're going to be in the public eye. And as we're seeing, anyone who's in the public eye in this day and age, if you got skeletons in your closet, you best believe someone's going to go hunting. So to what you said, Rob, I agree. There would be immense jealousy, and these people would be under a microscope. So every move you make, so think like Batman, right? Let's imagine he accidentally breaks someone's ankles, something along those lines. People are going to find a way to sanction him or to go after him in some way. So yeah, The Boys is a good example. If you watch that, you can kind of see.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point. I didn't even think of that. The Boys. But yeah, I mean that's a good point there. Oh, sorry, there's my dog. He agrees.
That's awesome. I was gonna say something and then I fucking forgot. God damn it. Mm,
Yeah,
it was the dog. The dog threw me. Go ahead, look.
fucking dog. Yeah. What? No. Well, all I wanted to say was like, even to Rob's point about like people and jealousy. You just look at anything as far as like sports or celebrities, right? Like Page Six, the New York Post has kept itself floating since the '80s by reporting on the Kardashians or whatever new internet thing is going on. So could only imagine you multiply that by a zillion with superheroes with all this power and stuff. It would be every day, right? Trying to get somebody, and then you get into time travel, and that's just a wild web to go down too.
Yeah, time travel is going to up the ante on this one, because then, right, any mistake you make, you could potentially undo it, right? It's kind of the ultimate trump card. So I'm trying to think of a different way we could steer this conversation, or a different perspective we could look at it from. I guess there is some interesting positive aspect to this, because if The Boys is true, then even someone like you said, Rob, these demigods walking amongst us, then it's kind of a good thing that society or a large group of people do have some control, right? Because a lot of these characters want to be looked at or looked upon favorably. They want to be looked at as heroes, and that kind of keeps them in check. Because the moment they stop caring what people think, then they can do whatever they want, right? That's the Punisher, right? He doesn't care what anyone thinks. People can think he's a murderer, and he kind of is, but he has his mission, and he's at it. But then someone like Superman, he kind of cares, right? He wants to be the hero. He wants to fully take upon himself that role. And I feel like we've seen in like the cartoons, he gets bothered when people don't understand what he's doing, or they think he's doing the wrong thing. So I guess that's a kind of a good check and balance, because they really, what else could you do to stop them, right? They're kind of all powerful, but like how they're viewed and how they're perceived, they kind of care about. And that's kind of their check. That's the check on their power.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up, because it made me think of one of the best examinations in graphic novels and television movies of what you just described, and it's Alan Moore's Watchmen. The reputation of this quote-unquote superhero or the Watchmen is so vital to their existence that it almost drives their entire purpose. And the thing with the Watchmen is a little different, because they're also like Bruce Wayne. They're all mostly humans. You have Dr. Manhattan, who is God, essentially. Not even essentially, he is God. He can do anything. He can go back in time. He can win wars by himself, alone, and things like that. So aside from Dr. Manhattan, you have this like ragtag bunch of humans who decided to be superheroes, then became celebrities, then had to deal with all the problems of being a celebrity. And to circle back to Logan's point from the beginning, if the Watchmen existed in 2020, they ain't lasting much. There's going to be so many people roasting them in the court of public opinion every day that they might just be forced to just give up what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think
No,
it's
I mean, I agree with that. Just the like exhaustion of having to deal with the court of public opinion every single day at every single turn and second guessing and third guessing yourself every time. It would be interesting to see that too.
I think a lot of it has to do with what you said, Chris, with PR. Like in The Boys, if you have someone who's worth $1 billion, like a Bruce Wayne or a Tony Stark, they're gonna hire someone who can actually cover PR for them, who can who can actually clean up the physical mess that they leave, and also kind of clean up the PR messes that they leave behind as well. It's definitely something that I feel like those characters would already be thinking about. And when it comes to like the supernatural element, I think there's always going to be like a divide. There's going to be a group of people who just never trust someone who has more power than them, and there's going to be another group of people who look to the superpowered beings for guidance, for uh, just a way of showing how these people should live.
So, Joe, you've read a fair amount of comic books, and it sounds like Logan has too. So, I guess my question is this a new thing? Because it seems that there's always been this trend in comic books going back, I mean, as far back as you can remember, the 60s, the 70s, of these characters, these heroes. And though they're trying to help the people, they're constantly at odds with the people. So, is what we're talking about necessarily a new thing, or is it just that the weapons used against them might have changed?
It's not a new phenomenon at all. It's definitely something that Stan Lee actually thought about when he created a lot of the Marvel characters, especially Tony Stark. With Tony Stark, he wanted to create like a Howard Hughes character who was unlikable in like the Vietnam era, who was a playboy, who actually made weapons for Vietnam War, like combatants, and he wanted to make a hero that people wouldn't like at first, and then that would grow to like him, because he wanted more of a like a character arc for him. So that it's definitely something that's been played around with for decades.
Yeah, but I think nowadays you don't get to that Tony Stark character arc. He's just canceled, whether through uh, whatever's currently going on, whether it's the Me Too movement, the defund the police movement, cancel culture, 1% privilege, whatever you want to call it. I think that's pretty interesting. Like to see Stan Lee or any of these writers have to write and build this character arc so much quicker for them to survive, but also if they are living in the year 2020 in this society, would they even be able to get there right before they are so like exhausted by it and exhausted by that 24-hour news cycle and everything else too, or they just throw up their hands and go, fuck it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking this whole time, and I want to throw this question back to Logan or Joe. You can take this because you're both well versed. Would it not only it's one thing to examine the actual character if they were real and existed in the same plane of existence that we do, but what about the creators? What about the origin story? Would those even survive? Not the character. Would Stan Lee be able to write Iron Man in 2020 if Iron Man didn't exist before 2020? So either of you can take this if you want.
So I think some of the characters would fly, and there are other characters that wouldn't. I think in general, I think both of you are sort of right. Like the kind of themes that they go through in the 60s with Marvel, it wouldn't fly now because it's much more of a push in today's society, in today's culture, for diversity and inclusion. And back then there just wasn't many um like Latino heroes or LGBTQ heroes or African heroes around, and that wouldn't fly today. There would be more of an outcry for diversity in the heroes, so that the readers or the people that are buying the content on film or TV, they can see themselves in the characters that are created.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, and we're already like seeing that stuff, and I think that's important. That's awesome to see. But it would be interesting trying to write something like even something like Superman or Doctor Strange, right? Where you're looking at these people who have to balance like two sects of their life, and the way they're able to do that is because there's not as much coverage, right? There's not as many like internet sleuths. Um, so I think that'd be like pretty interesting, right? Obviously, going beyond like the Clark Kent, I wear glasses, so no one knows who I am thing, but just like somebody like diving in and being like, who is this person, and starting to piece together footage and tracking everything. Um, I think that would be pretty interesting to see too, and then going back and digging up these problematic tweets or comments or whatever it is.
That sounds like me, Logan. That's what I would do if there were real superheroes in the world. I would be doing so much research. I would try to find out everything about that. However, I wouldn't use it against them. Like a lot of people, as you said, those internet sleuths, a lot of them are just looking for ways to tear people down so they can go on social media and post and say, "Oh, hey everyone, look how progressive I am. Look how cool I look because this person is an asshole." And look at what they did. Like you said, years ago, it could be. There's no time limit anymore. Um, but I would still be the person. I would admit I will be doing a ton of research on them.
I just was gonna say, back to Logan's original point about story arc. Right, a lot of these characters when they start out, like Tony Stark, he's not a great guy. He's a playboy. He's a weapons dealer. He deals in death. And you see this character, and he's not that great. I don't know if we or society would give the writer and the character the time and the leeway to grow, to adapt, and to learn, which is kind of an interesting thing. And me and Rob have talked about this, with social media and tweets and being able to dig up the past, things you said when you were 12 years old. And that is an issue that not even superheroes would deal with, but people in general deal with.
Right. I think you hit on something that's very important because when we were growing up, all of us are essentially in the same age group. When we were growing up, these many of these characters were revered. Superman is held in such high regard. That so is Batman, so is Iron Man, the X-Men. We I looked up to these people. I was inspired by these stories. Admittedly, I didn't dive deep into once it got to the cinematic history part of it, where there was the 90% of the movie was CGI. That's when it lost me. But that's filmmaking. That's a different animal. We can talk about that another time. But I revealed just the characters, and I think it would be the absolute opposite now. Not they will not be revered. People would be trying to tear them down just because it made them feel selfishly better in their own life. I'm not Superman. So if I can find something out about Superman and bury him with it, it's going to make me feel better about myself because I'm knocking Superman down a peg. But Logan, I'm going to throw a question to you. So in that same vein, what are some of the characters that you were at least when you were growing up? And Joe, I also want to hear your opinion as well. Like who were the superheroes that you took value from, that you wanted to adopt some of their character traits because you found them so like profound?
It would probably be like Batman, right? For the standard, self-made, doesn't have any superpowers, and he's able to do all these things. And then I would also probably just go Spider-Man as well. I think those are pretty standard canned answers. Getting back into like your like teenage rebellious phase, I feel like a lot of people at least somewhat liked the Punisher for the simple fact as he lives his life with his own rules, right? And kind of just had a vendetta and followed through on it because someone came after his family. So kind of that like respect and family focus. Those would probably be like the biggest three for me.
I would go with Spider-Man and the X-Men. I feel like with those group of characters, they kind of embody more of the regular person dealing with crazy real life situations on a day-to-day basis. that most of the other characters just wouldn't deal with.
Wait, you can just say an entire group of people?
Yeah, like okay, fine.
All right.
The Marvel
Like
universe.
like X
What
Men,
are
like
superheroes?
Cyclops. I mean Wolverine. He doesn't deal with the normal day to day like shit that Peter Parker
Cyclops.
would.
Cyclops sucks.
Cyclops.
Cyclops sucks. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm not sorry actually. But Peter Parker's cool. But go ahead. Got bit by a spider though. That's what gets me. But anyway, go ahead.
It's the '60s. What do you expect?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not like into the Spider-Verse, Rob, if you think getting bitten by a spider is bad.
Oh, I've been bitten by spiders. I promise you. But go ahead, Chris.
Okay, who? Obviously Batman. Wolverine was my dude back in the day. The X-Men show has not really stood the test of time. Spider-Man was also my jam. I loved that show. I always loved the characters who I don't think would have survived now, which, you know, the characters that were the loners were self-made, like you said, Logan, who had their own code, did their own thing. Those were the characters I like. I wasn't the team guy. Like I liked Wolverine because he is part of the X-Men, but he was also on the periphery. Yeah. I gotta wonder if let's see, how am I gonna say this? It shouldn't be easy to be a superhero if this was real, right? If this was real, it shouldn't be easy. It should be hard. And maybe this is kind of a good thing, right? Because even in the comics, right? Look, the X-Men, they were always in the news. They were always getting blamed for things. They didn't always have great PR, and maybe that's a good thing, because if you want to be a superhero, even when society doesn't really like you, like Batman, then you're probably the right person for the job, because you're doing it for the right reasons. You're doing it for something outside of being a celebrity, being looked at as a hero. You have something inside that's driving you. But I don't know. I'm going off. Sorry.
So one thing that I just thought about was the anti-hero. I feel like if there's going to be a group of heroes that are going to be maligned by cancel culture, it is them for sure. Like the Deadpool, to some degree, but not as much as a Deadpool, Wolverine, Venom.
Yeah, but
Someone.
Deadpool, he's pansexual. He's all right. He's
Yeah.
safe.
He's an ally. But I don't know, because like with the anti-hero thing, wouldn't they just do it like Joe Rogan and Joey Diaz did? It was just like, no, I'm not going to get canceled, and just like keep moving on.
Yeah.
just ignore it. Be like, no,
Exactly.
no, yeah,
Tell them to go fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a fucking superhero. What are you going to do to me?
Sorry, Joe. Go. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off. I was just throwing that in there. I just started thinking, oh, anti-heroes, because when I think of someone who has like infinite power and that would be maligned by the public, I'm thinking of a villain, and the closest to a villain and a hero, I'm thinking would be an anti-hero. And I feel like the anti-hero more so than a normal superhero would get maligned by the public.
Joe, where does Bucky Barnes fall into all this?
That is hilarious. Fuck. That is a tough one. I feel that's a perfect.
Who the hell is Bucky Barnes, first of all?
He's the Winter Soldier.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so basically, just a brief rundown. He's a character that got mind controlled and was pretty much used by the Russians and Russian Hydra to do their bidding. And then he got reverse mind controlled, and now he's back into U.S. society. He's working with his friend again, Captain America. But the bad stuff that he did would definitely be criticized and probably be put out there for cancel culture for him to step aside and not try to do any public good. So that's actually a great question, Logan. I don't think he would survive in cancel culture, not at all. Not at least not with his history.
Okay, all right, yeah. I mean, you have that. Yeah, it would be interesting, especially, yeah, how he wasn't that great of a person. And then even towards the end, how his only like ally was Captain America. Now that's another one. Would Captain America survive in like a global view?
I think that's another good question. It would he I think he would be panned as almost like South Parkian Matt Stone, Trey Parker, Team America. That's what he would be labeled as and pegged as. If Captain America had existed in real life today, he would be the world police, quote unquote, and it would be a negative connotation for him, or perception is a better word. But I
I'm
don't know.
glad you explained yourself because for a second I was like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, no. He would be portrayed as someone that goes out of his way to police the world where he in places where they don't even want him to be. That's I mean, I don't know much about Captain America, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. I could just be talking out of my ass.
No, you're right. I think he would be used. He would be used as propaganda for sure, and I think there would be a backlash against that too.
Yeah, exactly. Even his costume alone.
You leave his goddamn costume alone.
Those colors don't run.
Listen, man, when Chris Evans comes out and he's looking just enormous, and I'm watching Chris Evans on the TV. I think I talked to Joe and Chris about this, and yeah, and first of all, he's like, "Hey, I'm the Human Torch. I'm the fire guy." Whoop, nope, psych. I'm Captain America now. So fuck you. I can't deal with that.
We're not going to talk about that Human Torch era. That didn't exist.
So I have a question for you guys, and I kind of brought it up earlier, but we're going to go full circle. So even though a lot of these characters go against or embody a lot of, these movements that we're hearing about, obviously there's still enough people that like them that these studios are willing to spend millions and millions of dollars to make these films. So is it that we just haven't caught up, and over the next few years you start to see these Marvel movies get hit and the studios are going to have to start reevaluating what characters they use? Or is it that even though society's going in one direction, there's still this hunger for something else that's kind of embodied in these, many cases, overtly masculine superheroes?
So that's a great question. I think when it comes to Marvel in particular, I think there's definitely an appetite for it. And I think that Marvel knows that in order for them to not be criticized for making these type of movies, that they're already kind of diversifying their roster of characters. So you already see Captain Marvel, which is like their first female-led character, which was somewhat kind of mixed in terms of the reception for the character.
Be careful there. Be careful there, Joe.
I didn't mind the movie, but I definitely know there's a lot of people that didn't have like the kind of reverence for Captain Marvel that they do for like let's say Black Widow. Then there's like a Black Panther that came out to like a huge like rave like reviews and fans really loving that movie, and they're kind of doing a lot more different things in the future. They're gonna have like their first Asian superhero movie come out, I think in maybe a year or two. And I know that with the pandemic, they didn't finish filming, but I think a big part of cancel culture is kind of more representation, and that's something that's being pushed out there. When it comes to DC, I think they've already been doing that. If they could just kind of fix their fucked up situation in terms of kind of representing the characters the way they were in the comics, then they might be out there a little bit. But if this kind of cancel culture was out there like it is now in the 70s, I think these characters and the way they were revered would not fly.
What about women, you think? Because, right, a lot of these characters, the way they're drawn, think about it, they're written in the 1970s. And if you look at the drawings, the women are drawn a certain way. Their costumes are a certain way. Certain attributes are highlighted. Do you think that's going to start to change? Because look at Black Widow. She's always wearing skin-tight clothing all the time. There's the sequence in one of the Iron Man films where she's going down, fighting a bunch of guys down this one hall, and it's a bunch of close-ups, on her body, on her eyes, on this angle, on that angle. Do you think that's going to change? Because there is a trend in comic books to quote-unquote objectify women. So have you heard anything about that, how they're going to try to change that or tweak that?
So just to quickly answer that, and then I'll let Rob and Logan answer or jump on top of that as well. I think in the comic books, there's no way it's changing. I think the demographics for people that read comic books skews heavily male. So the comics, they're always going to be kind of a different kind of look to the characters and the way they're drawn and the way they're portrayed on film. I'm sorry, on comics. In film, though, that's changing as we speak. You don't The way Black Widow was portrayed in 2010 is completely different than she was portrayed in 2018, 2019, 2020. And I think going forward, you're going to start to see that more too. They're not going to be overtly sexualized as the way they used to be in like the 1990s or the 2000s with a Catwoman or a Supergirl or Storm. It's just going to change.
Wait, so but Black Widow is Scarlett Johansson, yes? Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I did see one of those Avenger movies, the first one. One of my favorite characters, but she's my homegirl, is Kobe Smulders because she's Vancouver. She's from Vancouver, British Columbia. How are you? That's why I love her. Big time Canucks fan. I know I've mentioned her several times on the podcast, and so she's my favorite character. But she's not one of the superheroes. So I know she works for the organization, whatever organization, corporate side, whatever. I don't know, but
Totally corporate.
yeah, whatever. She's in. I don't know, man. But I like Kobe Smulders. She's awesome. And so what was your question, Joe? uh, I got lost.
It wasn't my question. It was Chris's question. But the question
oh,
was
or how women are portrayed. Yeah.
exactly.
Yes. Will it be correct? And I think Joe is right. Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, the, like Joe said, the audience and the people buying the comics and reading the comics is heavily male dominated. So if you're going to sell in terms of a business side, if I'm the editor of the comic of the studio creating this, I'm gonna want more people buying tickets to this movie, renting this movie, watching it, streaming it on television, buying the comic, reading the comic. I mean, this is a whole nother topic for. Once again, we've unearthed like 3 more topics that I want to talk about today, but um, I don't see that changing anytime soon in the comic universe. It won't, because in from a business perspective and from a creation perspective, it's makes more sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, especially when you look at like the graphic novels and how they're considered canon compared to like the movies where you have to move forward with the times and you have a wider audience, right? So I think that's going to be important too. But you are seeing more with like the comic books and stuff like that is them skewing to like a different demographic with like younger superheroes and different things like that. Like I can't find her name, but there's a superhero who's a STEM student at a Brooklyn public school, right? And it's like one of the highest grossing comic books of like the last couple years.
I know exactly
So
what you're talking about. It's
yeah,
Miss Marvel.
is it Miss Marvel?
Yeah.
I'll take it. Okay. So I mean, you're definitely like, I think they're opening it up to become more and more inclusive, which is awesome to see. But I think for as the movies, especially for Marvel, I mean, you got Mickey Mouse churning the money machine, so they're going to do whatever they do to keep this thing going for the next 50 years. at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true. At the end of the day, it comes down to money, right? If the money keeps coming in, whatever they're doing, they're not going to break the pattern. So Logan, I want to throw this back to you. Is there anything we haven't yet covered that you were really thinking about when you wanted to talk about this particular subject? Like one thing I can think about that we haven't talked about is casting, right? Let's look at films, for example. I know there's been issues where you have a character who is Asian in the canon, in the actual source material, and then is cast as a white blonde-haired woman, and how that's caused issues. But I've also seen of late where a character that was a white blonde-haired woman in the source material in the comics is now being portrayed by like an African American woman. So does that kind of tie into this theme that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that fits too. I just think it's this whole conversation is pretty interesting, and as somebody mentioned earlier, it's going to open up like 3 or 4 additional conversations skewing off of it. But when you have those people who, you know, and that I guess this goes for like every aspect, every facet of life, where you have those individuals that just want it the way it always was, and it should never change and go exactly by this. Um, I think those are the reasons that they're gonna keep kind of the canon in those graphic novels compared to you're gonna see everything evolve and become a lot more like fluid in the newer movies, and just more like larger format, right? For like the movies and now the streaming and stuff like that. The other thing that I thought would be just pretty interesting to touch on would just be kind of like the isolationism of like Black Panther and Wakanda, and see how do you think people would react to that? Um, so that was just another question I would have for the group.
So I want to circle back to Chris's question. Um, I know for me, I'm like a huge Spider-Man fan, and just seeing Zendaya play MJ kind of bothered me. I and I understand why they cast her. I think she's a great actress, and they wanted to kind of represent what more Queens public schools really look like, or STEM school would really look like. It's a lot more diverse than it was portrayed in the '60s, but with Stan Lee. But when you grow up loving a character, you want them to be portrayed as the way they you were introduced to the character onto the screen the same exact way. So I know for me personally, I it's great to have representation, but to me it shouldn't supersede being accurate to the source material, and that's a big thing for me.
That's interesting, Joe, because you're right. I can see both sides because you need to be able to adapt. And the story needs to be able to change, and those stories have changed, right? They've all changed to some degree. I mean, Batman in the 50s is not the Batman of today, but is there a line where too much change is not
No,
good?
you're thinking of 1969 Adam West, are you?
Correct. Yeah, there you go.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
So a very different Batman, completely different, a little hokey, not the same as the Batman of today, the one that we enjoy and grew up with, the cartoon Batman. That's a very different Batman, a very different character, and it's changed for the better. But I wonder, like you said, Joe, is there a line where you're not just changing the story and evolving it, but you're actually changing it at a fundamental level? And I don't know.
I remember watching Wonder Woman with a buddy of mine in a movie theater, and I was kind of astonished by the reactions that the women were really giving towards the movie throughout the whole movie. And I don't know if have you guys actually watched the movie?
Yeah,
yes, I have seen it.
What did you guys think of it? Because I know after watching it, I the first half of the movie to me was really good, and the second half was just terrible, absolutely terrible. And every time I have this conversation with a woman who loved the movie, it's kind of boiled down to like a battle of the sexes thing. And to me, I don't see it that way. For a movie that's kind of important to a lot of different um, factions of society, especially females. It's hard. I could sense from some people who reviewed that movie, like professional reviewers, that they didn't want to really dissect it because of what it meant to a certain group of people. And that's one thing about like the culture that we're in now, where I kind of feel it's kind of doing a detriment not only to the movie, but not but also to the fans as well. If you're not able to really criticize a movie the way it should be criticized, then why have this conversation?
But isn't that kind of what we're talking about? You can't really have like a true conversation because if you're commenting and your comments go against the, what do you want to call it, the, what you should say, then you might run into some problems.
You hit the nail on the head with that. I think it's one of those things too, where if we're living in this safe space and you can't like provide that feedback or that criticism, everything, including art, is going to suffer through that. But I think as far as like female superheroes, they've done a great job, like with Marvel, right? Unfortunately, I think Wonder Woman, even though those that one with two movies, they were good. They just kind of like every other DC movie just trailed off at the end, and you leave the theater or you finish the movie, you're like, how the hell did I get here? Like, where am I? And that's what I think a lot of people were like scared to say, right? And to be anti-woman or something like that.
Which is ridiculous, right? You can say a movie is bad. You're not saying it's bad because it has a female lead. It's a bad film. And I get kind of worked up by this because, right, if you were a young girl and you wanted a role model, honestly, superheroes and comic books have done a great job for women. There's so many strong, powerful female characters, and they were writing strong, powerful female characters in a time where you probably didn't get a lot of strong female leads on TV or in other areas. So I don't really know where people's coming from. Like, there's so much diversity in these comic books. Weren't the X-Men supposed to be, right? In a way, they were the LGBTQ community. And if I recall, even the writers were kind of hinting at that, right? It's this group that is among us, but it's not really accepted by us, this mutant demographic. And I think sometimes these comic books get a bad rap because I think they've done a great job at creating diversity and creating strong, powerful characters to look up to.
All right, yeah, I'll take it. Just to put a bow on the female superhero segment, I'm unlike the three of you guys. I we all I can speak. I know I can speak for all of us. Is we all support strong female leads. We want to see. I enjoyed, as we said, I enjoyed most of that movie. It was cool. I enjoyed other movies with female leads. It's not about that. It's about the environment that's now created. That if you say one thing that's negative, oh, it's extreme now. You say one thing negative, you're a misogynist. You don't like the movie because it's Wonder Woman. It's like, no, it's not that at all. I want to like the movie. I support it. I want all these things, but we should still be able to evaluate the movie as a normal movie can be evaluated. That would be my bow on that.
What do you got, Joe? What are your final thoughts?
My bow is exactly what Rob said. I think it's just to piggyback on that. I love these characters, and I don't want them to be half-assed. I want them to be done on screen as best as possible. And it just kind of it disappointed me to watch a character that I really like Wonder Woman, kind of be the second half of the movie really be shit, really. And I want the character to be really well portrayed. And I know the stakes are high because you have a female lead for a multi-million-dollar picture, and you have a first female director for a big movie like that as well. And you want to see them really succeed, but you also want a good movie as well. And it just kind of disappointed me. And I feel like having a dissenting view shouldn't preclude me from wanting a picture like that to be successful.
Logan, why don't you end us with some words of wisdom and your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a great conversation, and I think we touched on a lot of different things, and I'm just glad to be invited on. And thanks for the opportunity, guys, to share my weird quarantine brain with everybody else.
That was another episode of The Crow's Nest. We'll be back with another episode very soon. But in the meantime, if you feel a desire, a burning itch to help us make this production even better for the ears, better for the eyes, better for the soul, then pop on over to our Patreon account where you have the opportunity to give us those nickels, those dimes, those pennies, or those dollars. Honestly, whatever amount, it does help. And the hope is that this production will get better and better. And yeah. So everyone out there listening, have a great night. Bye.